Hello, I'm CJ Wellerman, and in this episode, we reveal how a growing understanding of Islam is fueling support for Palestine among right-wing Christians in the United States. But first, please remember to like and subscribe to our show. Now let's get into it. Much has been made of the massive shift in support for Palestine among Democrat voters, with only 38% of left-wing Americans favouring Israel today, down from 58% a decade earlier.
What are we talking about here? All right, who Democrats sympathize more with, Israelis or Palestinians? In 2017, the Democratic Party was a pro-Israeli party. Look at this. They sympathized with the Israelis by 13 points, more with the Israelis than the Palestinians. But look at this sea change. Now Democrats sympathize more with the Palestinians by 43 points. Oh my God, that is a change in the margin of 56 points over the course of just 8 years. So all of a sudden, it's the pro-Palestinian position that actually reigns supreme in democratic politics, not the Israeli position. And that is
attracting far less attention is the manner in which Israel's genocidal operations in Gaza have created a massive and growing divide among right-wing Americans, who for decades formed the bedrock of political support for the Zionist state, leading many to rightly argue that the sudden collapse in support for Israel among Republican voters is probably the most significant turn of events since the October 7 attacks. These are the same people who have long defended Israel by arguing the Zionist state is locked in an existential battle for the future of Western civilization against radical Islam. A trope that has been pushed exhaustively by Fox News on a daily basis for 2 full decades, particularly by former anchor Tucker Carlson, who peddled a multitude of Zionist manufactured anti-Muslim conspiracies to his audience of millions.
Will someone, somewhere, make the obvious point that perhaps France is having these problems because it has the largest Muslim population in Europe as a result of its immigration policies? Is it time to rethink immigration policies in Europe and, by the way, also here in North America to pay attention? 10,000 right-wing extremist terrorist acts every day. It still doesn't answer the question. Why are people coming to this country in the name of Islam killing Americans? And don't you think you should pause for a minute and reflect on what's gone wrong within your community?
Tucker also pushed the Great Replacement conspiracy, which falsely claims a secret cabal of powerful billionaires are helping left-wing political parties attract more voters by secretly facilitating the mass migration from Muslim-majority countries. This racist conspiracy inspired a right-wing terrorist to shoot up a New Zealand mosque in 2019, killing 52 Muslim worshippers, and it drove another to massacre 6 worshippers at a Canadian mosque 2 years earlier. And before that, it fueled the bloodlust of Anders Breivik, who mass murdered more than 70 university students in Norway in 2011. In the wake of this carnage and bloodshed, Tucker Carlson was rightly accused of playing a major contributing role in these attacks, having promoted the Great Replacement conspiracy in 400 of 1,300 episodes during his time at Fox News, according to a deep analysis by the New York Times.
I know that the left and all the little gatekeepers on Twitter become literally hysterical if you use the term replacement, if you suggest that the Democratic Party is trying to replace the current electorate, the voters now casting ballots, with new people, more obedient voters from the third world. But they become hysterical because that's what's happening, actually. Let's just say it, that's true. Let's say that again for emphasis because it is the secret to the entire immigration debate. Demographic change is the key to the Democratic Party's political ambitions. In other words, you're being replaced and there's nothing you can do about it. So shut up.
That was the Tucker Carlson of yesterday. That was the Tucker Carlson who carried a lion's share of the anti-Muslim hate on Fox News and on behalf of Israel for years. Today he's a changed man due to his sudden appreciation of Islam and a greater understanding of the corrupting and harmful influence the Zionist lobby has within the American government.
What Islam means is submission. And like let it hang in the air like that was self-evidently disgusting. And I was like, I kind of think submission to God is like the whole point of life, but I didn't say anything. I was like, I don't think I'm against that, actually.
Witnessing Israel's savagery and barbarity in Gaza for 2 consecutive years delivered Tucker his metaphorical come to Muhammad moment.
Asking Benjamin Netanyahu, over 20 years ago when terrorists were occupying the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem, which is a city in which Jesus was born. So it's, arguably the most important church in Christendom. And the IDF fired into the church, killed, I think, a bell ringer. I think may have killed a monk. Anyway, killed Christians in a Christian church. And I was totally for Israel. I've never been against Israel, actually, which is the hilarious part. But I remember saying to him, like, you're using American weapons to fire into the Church of the Nativity? This was on CNN at the time. And boy, it was like, were you an anti-Semite?
Yeah.
No. I don't want to fire into the Church of the Nativity. Like, how is that okay?
Right.
And why does everyone think it's okay? It's not okay.
It's not okay.
In a recent interview, I noted that ever since the September 11 attacks, the Western media has framed Islam to be a national security threat, with every bearded, brown-skinned Muslim considered a potential terrorist in waiting. The FBI even put forward its conveyor belt theory, to argue that the more pious or conservative a Muslim man becomes, the more likely he is to hijack an airliner or become a suicide bomber. A profoundly racist theory, if ever there was one, but one that has now been successfully refuted and flipped on its head by the undeniable courage, humility, and resilience of the Palestinian people, who have bravely defied Israel's unique cruelty and evil. No longer are Palestinians and Muslims considered terrorists. Americans now see a proud, noble people who remain defiant, humble, and strong in the face of unimaginable cruelty, oppression, and suffering. This inspirational defiance explains why many Westerners are now picking up the Quran and learning about Islam for the first time in their lives.
Reading the Quran, and I have a lot to say, especially because I grew up as an evangelical Christian.
Now, did I expect for me to read the Quran and it resonate with the core beliefs and values I already have?
I didn't know any of this stuff. The propaganda runs deep, but I don't think I've ever understood anything as much as I've understood the Quran.
I'm no longer a Christian reading Quran. I am now a Muslim reading Quran. Alhamdulillah, I am Muslim today.
So I'm taking my Shahada today.
Gaza has cast the Islamic faith in a new and positive light, one that even a former Muslim-hating ideologue like Tucker Carlson can no longer ignore. The stuff he says about Islam today would have been unimaginable just 2 years ago.
Remember after 9/11 when I was like, all about attacking Islam, I knew nothing about Islam. I'm not Muslim, by the way. I don't work for Qatar.
Contrary to what a lot of people think, despite the paychecks from Qatar.
I'm not a secret shit. But I remember hearing someone I worked at CNN at the time, and like we had all these endless experts, most of whom kind of worked for the CIA, but whatever, I realized that later. But I remember who it was come on and be like, Islam is bad. And I was like, sounds bad, whatever. I don't know if I ever met a Muslim, but he's like, you know what Islam means? Submission. And like, let it hang in the air. Like that was self-evidently disgusting. And I was like, I kind of think submission to God is like the whole point of life, but I didn't say anything. I was like, I don't think I'm against that, actually.
And now that
Tucker's increasingly favorable views of Islam is helping him discern oppressor from the oppressed, perpetrator from victim, and occupier from the occupied. He no longer sees Israel as an American democratic outpost surrounded by brown-skinned savages. He now understands that Israel is a noose around America's neck, and that the real terrorists are Israeli soldiers, not Palestinian children.
If you're intentionally killing civilians, you probably shouldn't beat your chest and brag about it. Maybe you can make the
I agree with that.
Maybe you make the case that we had to do it or whatever, but you should.
I agree.
You should weep, and that's evil, and you should just say it's evil. And I know it's really threatening to.
Is it evil, though?
Ben Shapiro to say that or whatever, but
Is it evil?
to kill civilians on purpose? Yeah, it is. I think it is.
Really?
Kids and children. Well, how is it not actually?
In a war?
Well, you can call it whatever you want. How is it right to kill women and children?
I didn't.
Today, Tucker is a man on a mission to expose the corrupting influence Israel has over the US government, and is explaining it in a way that makes sense to ordinary Americans, by reminding them that every taxpayer dollar sent to the Zionist state is another dollar not spent on improving American lives.
Killing themselves.
Yeah, okay, but that's their country.
Right.
I don't understand why the selling out of my country, where I'm from, by my countrymen, like that really offends me.
Yeah.
That's fair, isn't it?
Right, because I don't hear Israelis wanting to pump us with billions of dollars. Israel has a surplus, a budget surplus, and a space force. Like, why are we... just driving down streets, seeing like homeless people.
Oh, I know.
I was driving down the street just the other day, just this guy like with a bag, just like, falling out of the trees. It was in California a few weeks ago. And just the tents, I mean, I couldn't believe the amount of tent cities underneath
It's a
overpasses.
national emergency. It's the most pressing national emergency I can imagine. If your countrymen are dying of drug ODs by the hundreds of thousands and living on the street by the millions, which they are,
Yeah.
how is that not the most important thing that's happening in your country?
On July 14th, conservative Americans gathered for the annual Turning Points Convention, led by prominent MAGA influencer Charlie Kirk and attended by Tucker Carlson, who dropped 2 major truth bombs on what was once a staunchly pro-Israel audience. He said Americans who serve in the Israeli armed forces should be stripped of their citizenship, and he also said this.
Jeffrey Epstein was working on behalf of Intel Services, probably not American. And we have every right to ask, on whose behalf was he working? How does a guy go from being a math teacher at the Dalton School in the late 70s with no college degree to having multiple airplanes, a private island, and the largest residential house in Manhattan? Where did all the money come from? And no one has ever gotten to the bottom of that because no one has ever tried. And moreover, it's extremely obvious to anyone who watches that this guy had direct connections to a foreign government. Now, no one's allowed to say that that foreign government is Israel because we have been somehow cowed into thinking that that's naughty. There is nothing wrong with saying that. There is nothing hateful about saying that. There's nothing anti-Semitic about saying that. There's nothing even anti-Israel about saying that.
This is Tucker teaching ordinary Americans how to question and criticize US support for the Zionist occupation of Palestine. And while it must be said that Israel still enjoys support from a slim majority of conservative Americans, it should also be pointed out that this support is falling at a rapid clip. And nobody knows this to be truer than the Israeli lobby itself, which is why AIPAC is trying to plug a hole in its sinking ship by attacking and smearing Tucker Carlson as an anti-Semite, while it continues funneling millions of dollars towards electing politicians who are willing to put Israel before the interests of their own voters. But for Israel, there's only one major problem. No amount of money can quell the rising tide of anger and disgust over a genocide that will shape American politics for a generation to come. Gaza is changing the American right the same way opposition to the Vietnam War shaped the political left for decades. And this political phenomena is not occurring exclusively in the United States. These changing attitudes towards Israel are being reflected around the world, with a majority of people in 42 out of 43 countries surveyed viewing Israel negatively and Palestine positively. This will soon leave the Zionist state without any popular support from Western democracies, because changing voter attitudes eventually and always translate to changing policies, meaning Israel's days of preferential treatment are coming to an abrupt end. Therefore, the best thing we can do, at least for now, is to fast-track its terminal demise and total dismantlement. But that's my time for today. Thanks for watching, and please remember to subscribe to this channel. And we kindly ask you please support our effort to expose and confront injustices in the Muslim world by becoming a member of this show at patreon.com/CJWerleman. We can't produce, sustain, and grow this show without your help, and we offer exclusive benefits to those who do. But for now, good night, good morning, wherever you are, and stay blessed.